Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai. Well, today's the last day of Parliament. Yepers, that whole existential threat, Trump coming for Canada, Liberals are gonna fight and they're gonna not stop until they get everything fixed and remove and get projects built, and that all comes to an end today. So just as a reminder, it was Pierre Poilievre that warned all of his MPs they weren't going to have a summer break. They were going to keep Parliament open. They were going to spend the very first 100 days trying to fix Canada, trying to get Canada back to a strong, independent nation, try to get pipelines and projects built, and start removing all of the legislation that this Liberal Party has inflicted upon Canada over the last 10 years. We are seeing the exact opposite of what the Liberals said they were going to do happen. Now, I'm going to break down a few of the great questions that happened today, our last day in Parliament before they go for summer break. And in doing so, I'm going to just do the typical, show you the Liberals of the past, the Liberals of the now, and the Liberals of the future. And how it's the same Liberal Party, just giving themselves that much, much more needed power that they've been trying to get in order to finish off, their post-national state and push through this insane green religion on Canada. Let's get started in Parliament. And Canada's in big trouble. Big trouble.
It's been over 100 days, and this Prime Minister still hasn't set up an ethics screen to deal with his business interests. Just imagine a local school board trustee voting for a multi-million-dollar contract going to his business partner to build a school without telling anyone he's going to profit from it. Right. Canadians would be outraged, and they should be. When will this Prime Minister show some basic ethics and stop treating public office like a private opportunity?
Here. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has a record of achievement in 100 days that would make anyone around the world blush. We've reduced...
Okay. He has done nothing. I'll give him credit. He's done one thing. And that's it. And the one thing he did in the typical Liberal, the new Liberal Party fashion. So yes, they got rid of the consumer carbon tax. Everybody's like, yeah! What the media is not talking about, and again, if you're a new subscriber or a new viewer, I urge you to watch previous episodes. He purposely put tariffs on goods that the bottom So what used to be a middle class has been vaporized with this Liberal Party. And instead of having the middle class, the lower class, and then the poverty, now you have the lower class and the poverty, period. People living without homes, without food. So he's completely decimated the middle class. We have the largest, in 10 years, he has created the largest division of wealth in Canada. And he has, like I said, decimated the middle class. For all of those people making less than $90,000 a year, 90% of the products that class of people, all the way down to the bottom, to those living on the street, buy, those are what he put tariffs on. This is why, when he got rid of the carbon tax, you never saw a drop in the food prices. The brilliance of evil is astounding. This is evil. They tried to do it so that, first of all, it didn't look like, the carbon tax only dropped the fuel by a little wee bit, but really there's no big, when in actual effect, if he wouldn't have put those tariffs on, you would have seen a 25% or more drop in your food prices. And who did he do this to? Well, the largest demographic in Canada. There are more people that make $90,000 or less a year than there is those who make above. Evil begets evil. Elbows up, everybody.
Taxes, we're creating opportunities for Canadians. We've committed to pass a bill by July 1st that is on track to getting done. This Prime Minister has also proactively filed all disclosures required under the most stringent code of ethics that exists almost anywhere in the world. Of course, the Prime Minister will meet his requirements under that code and will keep delivering for Canadians.
The member for Cloverdale, Langley City.
This Prime Minister just voted to ban.
Okay, so we're also going to dabble on, and I shouldn't say dabble on, we're going to go into a committee.
Statistics Canada has identified that more than 1 in 5 returning students are unemployed this summer. Therefore, the committee agrees that in the face of the student unemployment crisis, and given that Parliament did not sit at all this year until May 17th, this committee, May 26th, this committee conduct a study of the student unemployment crisis pursuant to Standing Order 1082, consisting of at least 5 meetings, and with all hearings to occur before July 31st, 2025. Parliamentarians must be prepared to get to work this summer so that unemployed students can get to work as well.
If it's amenable with you, perhaps a friendly amendment that we adopt this to be a study, but not to have the 5 meetings before September. That way we'll give all the parties here at the committee the opportunity to determine, and send out invitations to witnesses. And I think that the study will be better for all of us. It is an important issue. We all agree that we need to look at this closer, but let's do it the right way.
I just want to make sure that what we're proposing is not being misconstrued. We are not saying let's wait until September to start the work, right?
And by the way, these 2 ladies, these are both Liberals.
We're saying let's complete it. Let's extend the time of completion so we can take a little bit more time to get the right witnesses and to have the real discussion and to do the right study.
The amendment has been carried. We'll now call a vote on the motion.
So they agreed on these amendments. The Conservatives are trying to work with them. They're going, hey, okay, cool, we can do that as long as, we can get this going through the summer. So we're going to agree to what those Liberals said for their amendments. And that way we can have at least all of this information packaged and the assessments needed in order so that when the committee comes, we've already had time to review all of this information in order to get this committee going, because the student unemployment rate is a rocket. It has been climbing. In every province across Canada, it's averaging 18.5%. In certain provinces, it is above 20%. And as usual, the way that the government uses the stats to give you these numbers, they're not giving you the truth. The numbers, if what the government says, double them. So if they're saying it's 20%, it's actually 40%. Math doesn't lie. Politicians and governments do. And they use stats to do it. And every government, Conservative and Liberal, do this. And they will manipulate the way they look at stats in order to alter the numbers so the government looks good. And they won't change each other's numbers because they know there's a chance they'll get in power and they'll need to use this same strategy of lying to Canadians so it doesn't look as bad as it really is. Let's listen to how the Liberals perceived and followed through in their word with these amendments.
As amended. The motion has been defeated. Mr. Jonas?
What?
Chair, I have a hard time understanding what happened because in the vote, because we had a discussion in which Liberal members said they wanted this study to happen on student unemployment. They got the adoption of their amendment, which extended the study until September 30th, and they still voted against the study happening. Pretty surprising. I don't want to sour the first meeting by suggesting there was insincerity, but can we come to some kind of understanding about whether you want to address the issue of student unemployment or not?
Ms. Katrakis?
Chair, I motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
We have a motion to adjourn.
There you go.
The meeting is adjourned.
There's the same Liberal Party. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. Absolutely embarrassing.
And gas-powered vehicles, adding up to $20,000 to the cost of a new car. Families are already drowning in bills, and now he's making it even harder to get to work or drop off the kids. Is it just a coincidence that Brookfield stands to profit off this mandate? And when will this Prime Minister stop treating public money like his personal investment portfolio and finally be transparent about the deals he stands to benefit from?
Yes.
So, while this is all going on, we also have this.
Last night we learned that the Prime Minister has an entire department of bureaucrats trying to manage his conflicts of interest, but they can't even tell us if the Prime Minister has set up a conflict of interest screen. And so that means that the former chairman of a multi-billion-dollar investment firm is sitting at the cabinet table and could be taking decisions that personally improve his financial standing. He's been Prime Minister for 100 days, but he's still jumping through these ethical loopholes. So why won't the Prime Minister stop hiding the truth from Canadians and come clean? What are your conflicts of interest?
Now, this is all known. So let's just hear the Liberal response.
Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. It's the first time I rise to answer a question. I thank the honourable member for asking my first question. And I ran because I wanted to fight for jobs in this country, and I wanted to fight to protect the climate in this country for my children and my children's children. That's why we have building an electrical vehicle supply chain that is driving record investment in this economy that's going to protect our workers, not today, not tomorrow, but 7 generations ahead. And I'm thankful I'm on this side, and I look to you to look to the other side to work with us.
No answer?
Member for Montmorency, Charleroi.
No, nothing. Well, why would they? Okay, so again, previous episodes, people, I broke so many stories on Mark Carney that I'm actually proud that a lot of other independents and there's a lot of these clickbaiters out there. They live off of like X, and they'll just click things off of X, and then they'll use AI in order to build a storyline because they don't research it. And in this way, it looks like, oh, they've researched this story and they're putting it all out there. So you get people like that, and then you get just regular other independents. Some of them good, some of them not. But I'm proud that a lot of the stuff that I was breaking when I first started this channel, and they still steal from me. And yes, it irks me I don't get the credit, but like I keep saying, as long as the truth's getting out there, it's getting out there. I've proven this already with Brookfield and Carney. Okay? So this is just one of the small scandals, and I want you to think carefully on where else this has happened, which I broke with Trudeau. Using Carney, using Trudeau in order to get heat pumps. Do you remember this whole scandal? And all of a sudden, out east, they didn't have to pay the carbon tax on fuel? For votes they did this, by the way. Which obviously paid off, didn't it? Well, the heat pump companies that are included in this deal that your tax dollars subsidize are owned by none other than Brookfield. Yeah, well, he did this in England while he was the bank governor there. And there's some beautiful articles on it. Labour advisor Mark Carney lobbied Reeves for heat pump subsidies. He actually wanted them to even change the rules, which they did. They did. And then guess what companies ended up getting the subsidies? You got it. Companies that Brookfield is heavily invested in. As always, I'll post all of this information below. You can go through it, you can read the articles. And like I said, I could do a whole 5-10 part series just on Carney's evil. him and Brookfield on what they've done, but I've already done a few great ones. Check them out below. Burning the rainforest down, building dams that running Indigenous people off their land. You think Bill C-5 has just given him permission to do the carnage that he has been doing around the world in third world nations with corrupt governments right here in our own once great nation? We're going to get back a little bit onto this a little bit later in the show.
The honourable member for Pierre Boucher des Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, C5 perfectly sums up the approach of the new Liberal Prime Minister. He wants to force pipelines on Quebec. He wants to do this by order in council without going through Parliament. And he wants to be able to bypass almost all laws, also by order in council, in order to help developers. And he's going to do this all through closure, without debate or witnesses, with the support of the Conservatives, while the 44 Quebec Liberals burrow into the woodwork. Do they realize that this was all vote buying? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important for the member to remember that we're in a trade war right now. Time is of the essence. There are aluminum workers in Quebec. And if he spoke to people in Ontario in the auto industry or in the steel industry, he would realize that time is of the essence. We need to take swift action. We need to work together to pass this bill so that we can build major infrastructure projects. And if he's still not convinced, he should talk to the Quebec Premier who supports this bill. The honourable member for Pierre Boucher des Patriotes Verchères. In just 4 weeks, the Liberals have shown their true colours. Those colours are Pierre Poilievre with a red tie. Many Quebecers voted Liberal to be protected from the Conservatives. Yet here we are with a government that wants to rule by order in council and force pipelines on Quebec with C5. A government that stole $814 million from Quebecers to buy votes from Canadians. All this in just 4 weeks. That's the true colours of the Liberals. Do they realize...
Okay, so he's typical Bloc. A lot of what he's saying is just, it's the typical, you ready? Fetch the ball. The pipeline and Carney is only interested in making his corporation's money. Now, again, I'm just going to say it, previous episodes, but a lot of people aren't aware that he's actually on a roster list for charges in the United States. This is the document. It is the Climate Control Exposing the Decarbonization Collusion in Environmental, Social, and Governance ESG Investing. His name is on here. Brookfield is on here. They're one of the worst corporations on the planet. They try to manipulate, and they do so, manipulate governments, like I pointed out with the heat pump. This is just one item. I've gone through so many before, previous episodes. Using the government to put in legislation that crushes companies from those countries to either invest in Brookfield's or their subsidiary companies and get on this carbon lie scheme, or they aren't allowed to either bid on jobs or just don't get to build jobs because they don't meet the green criteria. Well, if you have to be this carbon neutral, what's carbon neutral? All in these documents, it's all here, as well as I broke this story months ago, previous episodes. Like the dams they were building down in Brazil. They had it surveyed, they checked it all out. It's gonna take like 100 years for this thing to ever fill with water, if it ever does. But don't worry, they built the dam anyways, because then they could say, well, these are future carbon credits. Did they ask the Indigenous' permission? No. They literally expropriated and then flooded and kicked off thousands of Indigenous people from their native land. where they grew their crops, where they hunted, where they fished. Where do these people go? Well, now they live in the slums, in the Bravos, in the Burial, in these just complete decrepit shacks and shanties on the edges of these huge cities throughout Brazil. And then they take over the rest of the land, buy it up, put it through a farm scheme, and they then sell it off because now they've got the credits because the dam is filling, and then they sell it to other sub-companies, which then slash and burn these forests so that they can grow soybean on it. This is who Carney is. Carney was part of and actually was known within all of these green corporations to be this type of dictator. This is why he worked for Goldman Sachs, Brookfield, and all the rest of them. He knew and wasn't afraid to manipulate the system, step on heads, and decapitate anybody in his way for him to make money for his investors. Well, here, the Judiciary Committee knows this. This is why he needed to become Prime Minister. He needed the political protection, as well as they couldn't afford Canada to be flipped to Conservative, because then Canada could have exposed the majority of the Liberal Party, more than half, that are working for the World Economic Forum, who are all invested in these green scams. Moving on.
For Yellowhead. Years of poor forest management contributed to fires that devastated a third of the homes in Jasper last year. Parks Canada red tape, controlled by this Liberal government, is delaying construction of new homes. Their process has just exacerbated the housing crisis in the region. Despite the Liberal government allocating $160 million, their solution seems to be treating Jasperites like inmates and house them in ATCO trailers like a remote work camp. Is this Liberal solution to housing shortages to put people in sea camps for storage? There you go.
The Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, they're now really reaching. They are accusing the government of not living up to its responsibilities for conservation or responsibilities to national parks in this country.
Okay. Yes, we are accusing you of that. And anybody with the right mind, especially those living in Jasper, or like for myself, had friends that lived there and were watching what was going on, were watching and seeing the lack of conservation thought. After they had a beetle go through and kill millions of trees, they had standing timber that had been standing, and they were warning, environmentalists were warning them. They needed to get in there and cut these trees. The best thing that they could have possibly done was open it for logging, or open it and allow people in the area or small logging businesses to go in there, cut these standing timber, these matchsticks down, and sell it off as firewood or for pulp and paper, or there are uses for this standing timber. No. And they did it for a reason. Bureaucracy and environmental wokeism did in Jasper. Wait for it. There will be an onslaught of accusations that climate change is behind the devastation that occurred in the lovely mountain resort in Alberta. Environmentalists, academics, and the current Liberal government have blamed the Fort McMurray fire in 2016, the Lytton fire in 21, and last summer's Quebec fires on climate change. Why not blame it on Jasper 2024 too? Well, we all know, by the way, all three of those were caused by humans on purpose. Blaming climate change will be used to bolster increasingly unpopular climate change measures such as EV mandates, net zero power grid expenditures, and the carbon tax. Don't believe it for a minute. Parks Canada's insistence that thousands of hectares of dead forest be allowed to regenerate naturally turned Jasper National Park into kindling. Bill Byrne, a former Alberta deputy minister, frequently butted heads with federal officials over the refusal to thin out forests in the national parks. He wrote in the Edmonton Journal on Friday that Parks Canada's rigidly ensured the parks were becoming tinderboxes, which would not only destroy the federal parks, but, once started and out of control, would spread into adjacent Alberta forests. According to Byrne, a highly decorated archaeologist, the provincial warnings to Parks Canada goes back at least 25 years when the mountain pine beetle began killing trees in Jasper, Banff, and Waterton National Parks. The Alberta government permits selective logging of dead trees from provincial forests. It allows limited fire breaks in advance, conducts prescribed burns, and allows natural fires to run their course if lives or private property are not at risk, Byrne explained. That's far from the extremist approach, the eco-extremist approach by Parks Canada. For instance, no selective logging was permitted inside the parks to thin out the hundreds of thousands of trees lost to beetles. Instead, they stood bare of needles and red up for 2 decades, getting drier by the year like giant matchsticks. When wildfire finally came, kilometer after kilometer of the beautiful national park turned into a tsunami of flames that surged over a part of the Jasper town site in a matter of hours. But the concerns weren't just from Alberta. As long ago as 2016, Parks Canada's own chief conservation officer suggested it might be wise to engage in a little active management, i.e. selective logging. Nothing was done. In 2017, the town's popular longtime mayor, Richard Ireland, pleaded with Parks Canada that all the deadwood had become a major fire hazard. He worried even that the increased fuel load could, if ignited, make Jasper the next Fort McMurray. The green cultists in charge of Parks Canada wouldn't hear it. It was around this time that the federal agency decided to step up its efforts to convince campers and sightseers to take better care extinguishing their fires and putting out their cigarettes. In 2018, the House of Commons Natural Resources Committee recommended immediate and significant intervention in Jasper. And 2 longtime professional foresters, Emily Begin and Ken Hodges, did a thorough examination of the problem and predicted a mega fire was inevitable unless an active intervention occurred. Houses and livelihoods are at very high risk of being destroyed. Their predictions have come true, unfortunately. With a fire of this magnitude, expect a federal investigation, but don't expect Parks Canada to be handed the blame. Blaming climate change not only fits the current elite narrative about every extreme weather or nature event, it's also an easier explanation. Politicians, reporters, academics, activists, and many in the public are already conditioned to believe climate change is the cause of everything bad. Yes, that's what it's like. And it starts in the schools, who have been infiltrated by this climate religion. And these teachers have no idea that they're teaching lies. Break out the EVs, heat pumps, wind turbines, and fossil fuel bans. This is an old article, people. This happened right after the fires. Break out the EVs, the heat pumps, the wind turbines, and fossil fuel bans. Is this guy Nostradamus? No. He's a thinker. He's a researcher. Blaming climate change also means no one at Parks Canada has to take responsibility. It's also convenient. Now, the kicker to this is there's even been leaked, and again, previous episodes, that Stephen Guilbeault himself and his climate religion helpers had discussions about this, knew what was going to happen, and said, well, we don't want to do that because we don't want it to not sound like it's a climate-related issue. We don't want to hurt the climate scare, so we're not going to do anything. Back to the goofball, Steve McKinnon.
This government has prided itself as coming to the aid of communities, whether it be at housing assistance and any other kind of assistance. We've had a devastating wildfire season, provoked in no small part due to the climate change that we're
There it is!
Speaker.
There it is! Climate change! I said this previous episodes, it's already been proven and debunked. 67% of the fires out there are proven to be man-made. Human-made. 3% fall under the clause of other. And of that 3%, it's like 2.2% have been proven to be lightning. All of the stuff in the middle, they can't necessarily prove, but it all still falls under man-made. It's just, it's not people running around purposely starting fires or leaving their campfires burning. It's stuff like broken bottles that work like magnifying glass under extreme sunlight that start this kindling on fire. It's people in quads and stuff that have no idea as they're going through the trails and stuff that they ignited a small portion. By the time it even gets close to out of control, it could be days from when that person had quadded through. So even that person wouldn't be aware of it. It's not climate change. And I'm not a climate change denier. I believe in climate change. It's been happening for millennia. Thousands of years ago, we were under 2 kilometers of ice. Thousands of years ago, not tens of thousands, thousands of years ago, Egypt was tropical. The largest lake, freshwater lake on the planet was in Africa. This isn't 10,000 years ago. This is thousands of years ago. The climate is constantly changing. Moving on.
Mr. Speaker, after a decade of liberal anti-energy policies that drive out investment and plunge business confidence down, even the Liberal House Leader admits on TV that this government can't get anything built. Despite years of defending Trudeau's actions, Canadians want to see projects growing and energy flowing. But until destructive Liberal laws like C-69 are gone, it's just more empty promises. If the Prime Minister wants Canadians to believe anything he says, then he'll fully repeal anti-energy laws and get pipelines built.
Hear, hear. The Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we will present the members opposite an opportunity to build. We will present the One Canadian Economy Bill. We will rapidly advance projects of national interest and build one economy, not 13. The bill will grow the economy and make Canada the strongest economy in the G7. We would hope you'll join us in voting for this.
The Honourable Member for Swift Current.
So, Bill C5. And the Conservatives voted for this. And even though, yes, they made some amendments on it, they made a few amendments on it, this bill has no right being in Parliament. It gives godlike power over the people. It is wrong. Now, people are coming out with these excuses, and I've actually lost a lot of respect for a few people because of the way they're jumping on this bandwagon, and I can understand in theory why. Because in order for them, if, which they're not going to, but if the Liberal Party had a brain, if they only had a brain, which they don't, and actually cared about Canada, they would just get rid of, they would literally remove the last 10 years of legislation that's been like forced upon Canada. If they did that, it would take years for all of that, all of those legislative laws and stuff to be removed and cleansed in order for these projects to finally get built. What they could have done, instead of taking this tyrannical bill and putting it forward, is they could have put a bill like this forward, just giving any exemption to nation building projects to the investment communities to not have to follow all of these other laws, and they could have done it right after they eliminated Bill C-69, 51, and all the rest of them crappy laws. But they don't want to do that. And here's the reason. They need Bill C-69 because they don't want natural resources. They do not want our oil, our gas. They don't want it. They are heavily invested in blood oil. And they're going to take Canada over like they've been doing for the last 10 years. And they are going to force upon Canadians all of this crappy, unscientifically proven garbage like green hydrogen, decarbonized oil. That's like gray, that falls under the three classes of the hydrogen. It's all to make Brookfield, Carney, and the global elite rich. This bill is going to crush anybody who gets in their way. So even for people like Brent Wilson, which I'm going to show you an interview here, I lost so much respect for him. He understands the fundamentals of the bill, but they cease to have the foresight and hindsight to understand you still have to remove the last 10 years of bills that this socialist government has put in. This is this is not Canada. This is an outside global elite who are finishing their check, the check, and putting us in checkmate with this bill to force Canadians to move out of the way or get punted so they can put their green agenda forward. It's not often I agree with this lady, but she's correct. Where am I? I lost my mouse.
What are your concerns about the bill?
Look, I just think that, well, we continue to be very disappointed that First Nations rights holders, and I think Canadians as a whole, have been shut out of the Bill C-5's legislative process. And I don't think that that's the Canadian way. I think that First Nations, environmental groups, Canadians, they need to be heard, and their amendments should be heard, and nobody is listening to them, and the door is very tight to get through a door that's closed to many, including First Nations people. We saw that at committees this week when many chiefs that were sitting with me while I was doing my 5-minute presentation couldn't speak for their communities and for their treaty territories. And I think in 2025, that's not acceptable. And, to keep First Nations rights holders out of these discussions, that shouldn't be the Canadian way to do things. I thought we were, progressing further than that. And certainly I know First Nations and Canadians have tried to come a long way in the past decade. And, I just feel like sometimes when these bills like this are rushed that are so important and we're not listening to each other, that creates a divide once again. And so just like, this federal bill represents, we're pleased that some amendments have been made last night the other night until midnight we were working. However, we are still concerned that free prior informed consent is still admitted from this bill, and that the federal government has said that free prior and informed consent is at the heart of this bill. So the truth is, Bill C-5 does not include any language or reference to free prior and informed consent. Next week, we will be talking to senators about the bill and how they can make sure that free prior informed consent is included in the final version. And, the honor of the crown does rest now with the senators, Canadian senators. So I hope they will do the right thing.
Can you explain a little bit about what that means, what the consent and as you were mentioning?
Look, it means what it means. You have to, consultation and discussions are a two-way street. You have to make sure that First Nations are at the table when these kind of important decisions are being made, and currently they haven't been invited to speak. And I hope that the Senate opens up some space for First Nations to come and represent themselves, to talk about our experts. We have experts, we have legal experts, we have rights experts and treaty experts that want to come and maybe make this bill stronger, or maybe they want to oppose it. And we do have many that also support it. But when we're closing that dialogue and keeping that dialogue very tight in the House of Commons, now it goes to the Senate. I'm hoping that the Senate opens up space for First Nations to come and speak about this bill next week, and if they have to, throughout the summer.
Okay, Chief, thank you very much.
Okay, so what she's failing to say, and this is what one of the things that I despise about her, is she is the typical kind of NDP liberal where no matter what, you cannot ever compliment what a conservative has done. You will never hear her praise Eli Ross. You will never hear her praise the conservative end of the Indigenous, who have created more wealth between, I think it works out to like 13 or 14 nations, than all other nations in Canada added combined. And how did they do so? By being conservative, libertarian, probably more libertarian because that follows deeper into the Indigenous belief system. Trust me, I know. And the fiscal responsibility and understanding of what the resources really are. So understanding that the government has been trying to crush and repress and remove every aspect of what it is to have an Indigenous identity. And the kicker is it's not just to the Indigenous. I have heard great quotes from Indigenous people who laugh at the Liberal Party and have done these beautiful little TikToks and stuff where they tell the rest of the Anglo-Canadians, welcome to the residential schools, welcome to the Indian Act. You're all part of it now because that's the type of control the government wants. So anyways, these amendments, who made the amendments? Well, she doesn't want to give credit where credit is due, so I'll do that for her.
Accomplished during this brief session of Parliament. I just point out that Mark Carney promised that he would cap spending at 2% in the throne speech, and then he broke that promise just minutes later, ballooning spending past 8%. Unfortunately, the Liberals decided to keep their ban on gas-powered vehicles. They voted against the Conservative motion to end the Liberal ban on gas and diesel-powered cars, and they doubled down on their EV mandates. And so, Conservatives are going to spend the summer listening to Canadians. We'll be coming back with concrete ideas to create jobs and investments in the fall.
But you are supporting C5 this afternoon to vote, correct?
We did some great work at committee to make sure that the Liberal attempts to circumvent laws like the Conflict of Interest and the Lobbying Act were stopped. They tried to give themselves powers to avoid that. We've seen what Liberals do even with existing conflicts of interest, lots of scandals where Liberals funneled money to insiders. So we did some great work at committee to build some protections around that.
And how are you spending the summer, sir? Mr. Nackley, what do you think got accomplished in this little
So,
happy summer. Well, look,
who was it that
it's been really busy, right? Last 6 months.
Again, no credit given where credit should be. By not working together, by not acknowledging that there are good things from the Conservatives, there used to be in the old Liberals good things from them as well, but that the whole new Liberal Party is just it's disgusting. It's completely anti-Canadian. And even the NDP, I hate saying it, do come up with some great ideas, albeit they are still a socialist movement and are responsible for where we are today. Now, I'm going to dabble a little bit further on in Parliament, but first, I want you to see this. This is Candace Malcolm. I have a lot of respect. This is Juno News. If you don't know who they are, definitely look them up. Again, all my information is down below. This is a great media organization. They have great reporters and they work together with other independent media. In fact, some of the reporters that work for Juno have their own outlets as well, or are part of other outlets. This is how media should be. They should be able to share and protect each other in order to make sure that the truth gets out. Sorry, just the truth. Now, I'm not going to play the whole interview. Like I said, I lose a lot of respect for Brett through this, But I want you to hear, this is the type of wording that we're hearing about Bill C5 and why they're backing it. And then you can rewind and listen to how I explained why this should never even be thought to be put through.
Okay, so yesterday we had a joint government caucus meeting between the UPC government in Alberta and the Saskatchewan Party in Saskatchewan. We had Danielle Smith, Alberta Premier, and Scott Moe, the Premier of Saskatchewan, do a joint press conference where they basically just said, look, enough is enough. We've had a decade of absolute disaster from this Liberal government. C5 is a course change. It shows that the government under Mark Carney wants to head in a different direction. And look, we'll take it. I'm going to play a couple clips here from Premier Danielle Smith. So here she is just basically saying the national self-sabotage of environmentalism gone awry has to end. It has to end. And this is the change we need. Let's play that first clip.
I think we're here today as a united caucus because we've decided that enough is enough. Development of provincial resources is provincial responsibility, and that includes the development of our transmission and electricity grids. The national self-sabotage that has happened over the last 10 years has to end.
And then next, Premier Danielle Smith goes on and she just talks about how she thinks that C5 signals that Mark Carney is doing publicly what he has said privately to her. And I believe he said things like this privately to you as well, Brett. But she's talking about how he is going to very soon announce at least 20 substantial projects, including mining, transmission projects, power projects, pipeline projects, which is exactly what Canadians have been waiting for. We want these projects built. We want our economy to get jump-started. We want young people to have jobs and opportunities and hope for the future. And we need an economy that works. So let's play the second clip about how Smith says that C5 provides the necessary conditions to jumpstart our economy. Let's play the clip.
I would say Bill C5 is a necessary condition to jumpstart the investment in our country, but it's not going to be sufficient to change the investment climate overall in the long run. If I understand where the Prime Minister is attempting to go, is by if he very soon is able to announce a project list that has 20 or more substantial projects on it that include mining projects and transmission projects and power projects and pipeline projects, I think that would send a pretty big message to the world about the direction that we're going.
So
now, I agree 100% with Danielle Smith and Moe. What they're saying, though, and that you're not seeing in this clip, is they agree with exactly what I had said here 4 or 5 minutes ago. They need to abolish all of these anti-resource legislative laws that have put in place, especially C-69. These have to go. If they did that, they wouldn't need to give God power to a government. They could then just give a reroute for all businesses, not just businesses that the governing power deems in Canada's best interest. This is Carney, people. This man is evil. As I've shown you early in the show, as I have shown in previous episodes, and as I have literally blown up stories exposing how bad these people really are. They're not environmentalists. They try to come off as environmentalists. They're not. They're using the green scam. They're using this fake green carbon bad lie in order to push through an agenda, for them to make trillions of dollars off of taxpayers and keep taking away our democratic and God-given rights. And now Brett, I lost a lot of respect for you in this interview.
Brett, I'm wondering, is this the first step? Do you see this as a course change for Canada and for the Liberal government? And what are your takeaways from those clips from Premier Smith?
Well, first of all, I'm a believer that C5 will make progress. But I think it's worth taking a step back and noting that in the last 3 months, there hasn't been a Liberal anywhere mention the word or name Trudeau. So they've clearly parked him in a cupboard. I think they deadbolt in the cupboard. They're not trying to kill the guy. I don't mean to be stupid about that, but they're taking him out of the picture because for 10 years, he, with his leadership, undermined our country. He had misguided beliefs, misguided delusional beliefs, and his cabinet aligned with him. And so now we've got Mark Carney politely, respectfully acknowledging that we need to participate in the world economy. He still has an overarching concern about the environment, and I'm still quite troubled that the new Liberal government hasn't focused on the EV introduction or mandate for 2035. But come back to big picture. They've closed the door on Trudeau and made it crystal clear they want to move forward. In various private conversations that I've had directly and very much indirectly through other people, it's pretty clear that they acknowledge and understand that if we try to punt, unwind, reverse Bill C-69 or Bill C-48, that could take 5 to 10 years. And now what they've done with Bill C-5 is effectively discovered, and I'm careful with this word, I think it overrides, bypasses, circumvents, overrules Bill 69 or 60, whatever it is, 6948. It allows us to get things done that are in the national interest. And I think that's what we keep hearing, and that's what I respect the most. Pretty clearly, it was Pierre Poilievre who laid the platform for everything we're doing, and the Liberals almost joke about the fact that they use Pierre's oversight and overview in plans, his policies. I mean, they can make fun of him now because he's not in the opposition. He's not in the driver's seat yet, but he will be. But it goes back to big picture. Carney and Hodgson in particular have made it crystal clear that they're not slowing down to look at 69 or 48. They're using Bill C-5 to run. And I believe that they will. We can joke about the fact that it's all talk, no action. Well, Tim Hodgson stood on stage a couple of weeks ago and said, look, this isn't about talk. This is about action. Give me another week. He came to Calgary in his first week in his career. Not once did a previous federal minister of resources show up to a room that was filled in Calgary. Not once.
Well, I tend to...
So, again, I agree with 90% of what he's saying, but he's agreeing that we should be giving Carney and the same Liberal Party. This isn't a new party. He even blew it and said the new Liberal. This isn't. These are all the same people who have scammed and stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from us taxpayers. The STGC scandal is still there. Nothing's being done by it. At least the committee has just rebrought in a couple of the old scandals through this new committees that have been being set up. But you're going to trust the same Liberals with godlike power over the people? Do you really think they're going to build pipelines in Canada's interest? Or is it going to be like what Trudeau did and make sure to build a pipeline that is heavily invested by people who are against the power of the citizens and Canadian companies to get oil and profit off it to market? No. Previous episodes. Brookfield is heavily invested in the TMX. This isn't a coincidence, people. They don't care about you. They don't care about Canada. It's all about profit and the takeover of the resources. The East has been trying to do this for generations. I know. Trudeau Sr. tried the same thing. That was where Western separatism exploded because of what his policies were, and they realized they were trying to steal the resources and take the money in order for them to use it out east in anything they wanted and screw Western Canada. You guys can do all the work and we'll take all the bread and butter. This bill's the same thing, except for now there's going to be pennies of it going to the Laurentian elite, but all the rest of it is going to be leaving Canada and being invested in these global corporations. Brett missed the mark, but he's an investor. He's hoping and praying. He's one of those guys with all of these other people in Calgary. They all got their fingers crossed because they've been waiting. They've been waiting. And in the meantime, in the last 10 years, while all of these companies have been going bankrupt or leaving Canada, they've also been being slowly bought out by other corporations' interests that all have ties to the global cabal, and Brookfield being one of them. They're decimating the West, and the West is done. They're done. I like this. This question was asked yesterday. I didn't play it for a specific reason, because I knew today I would be using it.
I'd like to turn to talk of making Canada an energy superpower.
Yep.
Danielle Smith has said, there could be a referendum next year, and the legislation around that is 170,000 people can put that on the ballot. Brian Mulroney once perhaps referred to rolling the dice with the future of Canada. Is it appropriate for that few people to put the fate of a G7 nation in the balance?
I see what you're trying to do, look, the province of Alberta, provinces make determinations on the rules governing referenda, voter plebiscites, other factors, and they can make determination on how they come into force. Determinations on broader issues of referenda on federal level, including supported by Supreme Court decisions, are governed by the Clarity. I will refer to the Clarity Act. But look, what we're interested in, what Canada's new government's interested in, what Parliament, I think most parliamentarians are interested in, is building this country, not breaking it apart. It's working together, working with Indigenous peoples, working with provinces, working with labor, working with business. We have many, we have this threat, this realizing from the U.S. that regardless of what outcome we get, it matters what agreement we get, but it's changing the world of trade. It is changing the outlook for the global economy.
That was a fraudulent slip, I guess. He doesn't care. He doesn't care.
In not just immediate, but the medium term. We have to take more responsibility ourselves to move forward, which is what we're doing with the One Canadian Economy Act and what's underneath it, which very much includes, and I'll finish on this, very much includes cooperation with the province of Alberta, the province of Saskatchewan, province of British Columbia, all the provinces and territories, Indigenous people, for these nation-building projects. And we're having constructive, I would say, very constructive.
Now, that's an absolute lie. Now, before I get into The Road to Freedom, which was just released by Jeffrey Rath, they came out with a budget. I just want to show one last little clip here.
Vancouver Kingsway. We Democrats want to build our economy and create family-sustaining jobs, but it must be done right. Today, the Liberals and Conservatives are ramming Bill C-5 through Parliament with shockingly little debate or public input. This bill creates Henry VIII powers, letting the Prime Minister override laws by decree. It guts environmental protections, undermines workers, and threatens Indigenous rights. This bill will end up in court. Why is this government violating democratic values and risking critical economic projects by tactics from Donald Trump's playbook?
Bravo.
He absolutely nailed it. He's bang on the money. Now again, the Conservatives aren't going to argue because they're hoping if they get power, they're going to have this same bill is going to be in their lap. And they're going to be able to do with it what they want. I definitely trust the Conservatives more than I trust the Liberals, but I don't think any government deserves the power, the godlike power that this bill is going to give them. This bill is wrong. Absolutely wrong. Now, just a reminder of who this guy is. I don't back 99.99% of what these people, the NDP, push. They're the reason we're here. They backed almost every single policy and bill. C69, 48, all of them were backed by the NDP.
Don Davey.
This is just another psychotic bill that he tried to introduce this week.
NDP lunatic in the House of Commons. He's the leader, actually. So this madness should be of no surprise. He says, today in Parliament, I introduced the National Renewable Energy Strategy Act, which mandates a national strategy to achieve 100% renewable electricity generation in Canada by 2030. Saskatchewan says no thank you, by the way.
By 2030, people. That's the lunacy. So I wanted you to see this so you understand. Even somebody as insane as these people can actually come up with and see the damages of what this Bill C5 entails, the powers that it gives.
And this is why the NDP has just, half a dozen MPs. So let's hear from him.
I'm honored to rise today to introduce the National Renewable Energy Strategy Act. I thank my colleague from Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie for seconding this legislation and all his work to protect our environment. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has been clear that we must cut global greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050 to avert catastrophic global climate change. The time for action is now. That means implementing solutions for clean energy and transitioning away from fossil fuels. While we do this, we must ensure that workers are not left behind. Jobs in Canada's clean energy sector are projected to grow by nearly 50% by 2030, and the industry's GDP contribution is on track to reach $100 billion by the end of this decade. This legislation would accelerate our transition to a clean energy future by requiring that the Minister of Natural Resources develop and implement a national strategy to ensure 100% of electricity generated in Canada comes from renewable energy sources by 2030.
Lunacy. This is why the West needs to run. This is why the West needs out. Now, back to this Alberta Independence Fiscal Plan. Now, I actually did an episode where I did one on Saskatchewan, and it came to over $60 billion in 3 years we would have in our coffers. That's what we would save. And within that 3-year time, I did not put in any future investments because it's hard to do that when it's fictitious. Sorry, just the facts. So I wasn't even about to try and blow up some fictitious revenue that could come, even though guaranteed it would come. So Alberta put this one out. So I'm just going to read you a little wee bit of it. I'll blow it up here so you can see it in its entirety. Friends of Alberta, this is the one. For too long, we've been told that independence is a fantasy, that freedom costs too much, that Alberta can't afford to go it alone. But now, the numbers are in, and the math tells a very different story. The value of freedom is the very first fully costed, detailed fiscal roadmap for an independent Alberta backed by conservative estimates, robust data, and decades of financial expertise. Authored by respected doctors, economists, and legal minds, this plan lays where the Financial Truth Ottawa hopes you will ignore, and with the help of their propaganda arm, state-funded media, meaning anybody who is following through with the CRTC, socialist government licensing system. What's inside? Alberta's net loss of $191 billion to Ottawa in just over 4 years. Yes, $191 billion. It also states how they can fund their own nation with surpluses. That's right, no deficit, surplus. A path to eliminate personal and corporate income tax, even the GST. A sovereign Indigenous partnership built on respect, not federal dependency. A realistic plan to transition policing, pensions, immigration, and defense with surpluses left over. An environmental strategy focused on Alberta's own priorities, not globalist mandates. This isn't a manifesto, it's a spreadsheet with soul, a blueprint for independence, prosperity, and renewal. Even if the financial benefits were neutral, the appeal of independence and freedom to act is, in itself, compelling. Why read it? Because you deserve more than recycled headlines or fear tactics. You deserve the facts and you deserve the choice. Sorry, just the facts. Now, the report, I haven't got audit yet. I am not a subscriber to Substack. I don't make any money on this channel. I'm peaked right out. If you can donate, I would appreciate it, because it would go towards stuff like being able to subscribe and get information to Blacklocks and this type of documentation, which gets put on Substack first. I will wait, and the second I find a copy of it, I will have it, and you will be able to have it too, because I put everything in my description. Now, I'm going to call that an episode, even though there is so much more that a person needs to go over. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. If you are, please punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until the next time, you guys, I'm Alias Guy. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. Stay informed.